Hello and welcome to the coronavirus update for the 9th of July 2020, where it is my sad duty to tell you that this isn't over by a long way. This was the early China outbreak. This was the spreading to, these are daily confirmed cases. This was the spread to most of Europe, most of America, most of North America, USA, and then this is spreading to the rest of the world. We're currently at about 12 million confirmed cases and 500,000 dead. In the long game, I would be surprised if the total ends up below 2 million. But it's always the problem with infectious diseases is 3 days of unconfirmed, uncontained spread. You can double these numbers. Yeah, 2 million if everything kind of goes well. And yeah, there are some patterns that start to emerge from the virus spread, some not so much. The two top worst countries in on the list are the United States, with some 3 million infected people, who their leader, Donald Trump, downplayed the virus to a significant extent and still continues to downplay it to a significant extent, and Brazil, who are also sort of wildly spreading, where Bolsonaro, the guy who dismissed the coronavirus as just some sort of sniffles, has recently been diagnosed with coronavirus. India continues to cook up. There's, of course, 1 billion people in India, which means that this can go up a long way. So the competitors for the most number of cases on a day are basically between Brazil, who tops out at about 55, and the United States, who is now robustly beating that whenever this actually updates. The United States is, yeah, they're almost up to 60. Well, they are. They're at 60,000 a day. And this is why Fauci said, seeing as this can double every couple of days, he wouldn't be surprised if this goes up to 100,000 per day. America's got a long. America, most infected country in the world, is still actually doing not so bad. If you take a look at the gross numbers, 3 million people, population of 300 million, only 1% has been actually confirmed as having it. And 3% of those have actually died. But, it is one of the robust patterns that the United States and Europe are about the same sort of size, but the United States is generally out of control, whereas, you're taking the worst performing European countries like the United Kingdom, and it looks pretty decent. Italy, another one of those ones, which was one of the worst affected countries in Europe, is down, 90% from where it was at its peak. Whereas America still hasn't actually peaked. It can still go up a long way from here. So this is a sort of generally robust pattern. Is everywhere in Europe seems to be contained. Now you can be a little more specific and actually zone down to specific regions. But before I do that, I'd like to maybe point out that if you take a look at the world, world cases when this updates. There we go. This is the world case. World cases. I made my first video. Let's take a look at totals. I made my first video back on this about them in mid-February, and I got a load of grief from people who, I wouldn't say conspiracy theory people, but people who wanted to scapegoat China and, were saying that I was crazy for, looking at the China numbers. Well, those numbers that I was looking at, even way back here in early February, have basically been robust for every other country across the world. And you get people who will come across with numbers that, you really believe that China, with a population of 1 billion people, really only had 100,000 cases. Well, the reality is there was only one region of China, about the size of a European country, that got infected, and looked at like that, it's not that far off. You take a look at China, there they are, 100,000, which is not far off, the European countries. Okay, 300,000, this is the same order of magnitude. But we can now take a look, and if we do the same nuanced approach to the United States. So this is from the New York Times, where they break down America by states. This is infections per capita, but it doesn't really matter. We're looking at the trends here. So you take a look at places like New York, and they've got a population, again, comparable to a European country. Their profile looks fairly similar, and a lot of these, they're although these places have tiny populations. But then you scroll up and you get to the ones that are not doing well in America. And it seems to be a pattern that the ones that are not doing well in America are rather surprisingly hot states and hot, humid states. So you take a look at the ones that are conspicuously doing bad. That's the ones that are going up a lot, and those that have a high population. So Florida, big population, going up like crazy. They're going to be bad. Louisiana, Georgia, all fairly decent sized states. Alaska, no one lives there. New Mexico, I mean, this is another one that's fascinating. So New Mexico and Arizona. I lived in New Mexico, and Arizona, they're very similar states. Yeah, Arizona is going boomtown whereas New Mexico isn't, and it's not obvious why that is. You might say that these are kind of states where it's come to summer and everyone is going inside with air conditioning. Certainly in Nevada, no one lives in Nevada except basically Las Vegas. So Nevada, Arizona, these are very samey type places. Places like California are a mixed bag. They got lots of deserty type areas and coastal areas where it's not so hot and humid. And Texas, again, very mixed bag. Inland Texas, very Arizona-like. Coastal Texas, very Florida-like. Gulf of Mexico, hot, humid. Hurricanes, that sort of thing. So you take a look at how this is cooking up, and it's not looking so bad, not looking so good. So I'm going to skip over at this point to my spreadsheet where I've been following various numbers. So one of the first numbers I'm going to look at is the infection rate. So I've been following this number as the number of cases in the world increases, you basically take the ratio of the number of people who died to the number infected. This number has not been updated. Oops. Let me just update this for you, and we'll see where this goes. And it continues to go down. But we can take a look at the sort of incremental changes here. So, between these 2 points, we know the number of new infected cases, we know the number of new deaths. We can actually calculate the instantaneous death rate, and it's sort of leveling out at about 2 to 3%, which is, again, fairly close to where China had it pegged. What they reckoned the death rate was. Very early on, I made some predictions about when America would get back to the line where the state of emergency was declared, which is about 500 cases per day. As you can see, this has just lost all meaning. It's just shot up. This isn't going to come back down for some extended period of time. There is no end in sight in America. However, on the bright side, if you take a look at the number of deaths per day in America, this is the number of deaths per day in America, which spiked at about just over 2,000. That puts it, by the way, at about the leading cause of death in America. A leading cause of death in America, I think, is heart attacks at about 500,000 per year. That means it's about 2,000 per day-ish. it's now dropped down. This was my prediction, the blue line here, which wasn't so bad until the latest resurgence, which is now actually starting to come through in terms of deaths per day. So deaths per day is getting up again to 1,000. But again, bear in mind that the doubling rate of the virus can be every 3 days when you're not contained. So you can quite happily, within a week be up at 2,000 dead per day, which would put it again to leading cause of death in America. Now, so dropping back to the numbers again, how much of this is due to leadership? It's obviously one of those things that, two of the worst affected countries in the world have leaders that downplay the coronavirus. So I'm going to take a look at the Trump tweets about how he disagrees. Here we go. I disagree with the Center of Disease Control and their very tough and expensive guidelines for opening schools. Really, America, until you've kind of got this under control. Anyway. So this is Dark Matter's reply to this. Whatever you say, game show host, which about pegs it. Let's retweet that. That's basically it. What the hell does a game show host have to add on the opening guidelines for schools? Shouldn't we actually leave this one to the professionals? In fact, it's been the long-term way that Trump has functioned. So I'm going to take a look at Trump's approval rating over his term. And for me, I just naturally assumed that this trend would just continue on both ways, and was stunned to see that Trump's approval rating basically baked in with about 40% approving of what he did, with only minor aberrations for this was the government shutdown that sort of caused some disapproval, which bounced back again. And this build-up here was actually the build-up to impeachment. And then he actually got a spike for, the beginning of the coronavirus. And then it's basically been a monotonic decline ever since, to the point where now, if you scroll down, you'll find even the Rasmussen polls, which are, they historically lean towards Trump, have him 10 points behind in the polls. Now, bear in mind that, even with the Electoral College, optimistically, you can be about 3 points behind in the polls and still win the presidency. So this is not plausible that he's going to win the presidency with polling like that. It depends what happens in the next 6 months. It's one of those things that, this isn't unique to Trump. Leaders will always claim that if the economy is doing well, it's due to them, and try and pass the blame on to others. But Trump takes this to a new level. But it's when you actually start taking a look at the actual numbers, his claim that, the economy has never done better than under me. Well, you take a look at national debt under Obama and under Trump. No great changes there. You take a look at unemployment. This was the 2008 recession, and then it's basically been a monotonic decline. There is no real change when Trump takes over. There is nothing that Trump has. There is no conspicuous thing that Trump has actually done to change the way things were going in the Obama administration. I wouldn't even go so far to claim that, Obama had a great deal to do with this, just like Trump doesn't have a real great deal to do with this. But the thing is that he does claim that he is responsible for this, which is really just not true. Or you take a look at GDP per year, GDP increase in America. And this was the recession, this was the Obama administration, this is the Trump administration. There's basically, um, if anything, it is correlation doesn't equal causation. And this is, Trump might claim that unemployment going down was all his doing. But in reality, he was just the guy who was sitting in a chair. There is nothing that Trump did that significantly, I can't believe anything. He, starting trade wars with China and such like. He's not helped the economy, but he is consistently claimed that it's his leadership that did this. The numbers just don't support that, and which does lead to the interesting question: is Trump actually responsible for this? Now, early on, I bumped into a lot of people who were saying that, it's all the Democratic states that were the only ones that were infected, which was basically New York and California. And there's some sort of truth to this. These were high populated areas. A lot of the places that got infected first were the places with lots of commerce, lots of travel, lots of air travel. However, the thing is that now you take a look at where it spread, Texas, Florida, a lot of the Republican South, that just doesn't hold up anymore. You can't just sort of blame this on, Democrats or Republicans. I mean, if anything, for me, the pattern is it's the hot states that are actually cooking up, whereas the cooler states are not so much anymore. But the thing is that things that Trump has certainly not helped. Competent leadership would have taken centralized control for this as a problem that will affect the whole country. Therefore, you need a federal response. So basically just delegating it to the states and saying you're all on your own. Not smart. And now sort of getting stuck in saying, schools should reopen and all this sort of thing. None of this is going to help. So that's basically the status quo of where we are with the coronavirus at the moment. And if you don't like me talking about Trump, well, basically his leadership is important to this. Arguably, if you'd had a leader that had said from the very beginning, we are going to enforce rigid federal quarantines early on, we're going to contact trace and all that sort of thing, it wouldn't be anywhere near as bad as it is now. But I mean, early on, way back here, when I was making my very first videos about the outbreak in Europe and America, I had concerns. I've lived in New York and Virginia and in New Mexico. I know quite a lot about the culture of America. And there's this thing that there's a lot of people who don't like the federal meddling in their lives, and a lot of conspiracy nutters. And you go through the maths and you work out, with the spread rate of being what it is, how many people have to not take the virus seriously before you can't control the spread anymore. And it was about 1 in 6 was the numbers that I was coming to. And that's not far off what I figure you have in America. There's this big counter government culture which has been stoked by, more recent, Trumpian things about don't believe what the media tells you. It's a great feel-good line, but the reality is, if that's going to extend to don't believe what the media tell you, that there's an infectious disease going around, and don't believe the media when they tell you it can't be cured by hydroxychloroquine, which I should do a video on that sometime. But yeah, that's just crashed and burned exactly as expected. It basically offers no tangible benefits in terms of, well, if it did, America wouldn't be as bad as it is now. Anyway, on that sad note, I will call it quits. I hope you found that informative, and if you did, please leave a like on the video, and maybe consider supporting this channel on Patreon. And thanks for watching.